Your campaign slogan is a new way forward, and it's time to turn the page. You've been vice president for 3.5 years. So what are you turning the page from?
Well, first of all, turning the page from the last decade in which we've been burdened with the kind of rhetoric coming from Donald Trump that has been designed and implemented to divide our country and have Americans literally point fingers at each other. Rhetoric and an approach to leadership that suggests that the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down instead of what we all know. The strength of leadership is based on who you lift up. The strength of an American president, which is one who understands that the vast majority of us have more in common than what separates us.
Madam Vice President, more than 70% of people
that is about turning the page on rhetoric that people are frankly exhausted of, Bret.
More than 70% of people tell the country.
And here, he's not really color on that, but she's saying that Donald Trump has brought poisonous rhetoric to American politics. And if I was Bret Baier in this situation, I would just tell her, well, your side has been calling Donald Trump Hitler. What could be more poisonous than that? And it would have been interesting to see her answer that. But let's see what he's going to ask her next.
Is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president.
And he's been quite nice. He's just moving on along with the interview, not sort of, pushing back against her claim that Donald Trump has brought bad rhetoric, divisive rhetoric to American politics when, for anyone who's been following, it's quite obvious that it is the Democrats that have brought the most divisiveness in rhetoric and that has accused Donald Trump and the Republicans of being everything from Hitler to racist to homophobic, and you name it. You could go on to enumerate all the name calling that they've done, and here is just moving along. But the question still holds. If you say that we need to move on from what exactly? You are in power. You are the vice president today. You are the one who is shaping policy.
That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
you
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade,
but
people
you're the
have
lever
become.
Of power.
But listen, over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me, the former chief of staff to the president, Donald Trump, former defense secretaries, national security advisor, and his vice.
All right, and here she doesn't really know what to say and what to answer because she really doesn't have any answer. Who could have an answer to that? And they're sort of trying to pretend that everything, the reason why the country is on the wrong track is because of Donald Trump, when really, what the American voters are saying is it's because of you. And the switch of candidate that happened just a few months before the election, it was really a remedy to that because, if you were running Joe Biden, the guy who's president, then it's obvious that if we're on the wrong track, it's his fault. But now with running Kamala Harris, maybe you can make the voters forget that she's actually the vice president.
Vice president, one, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous, and that people are exhausted with someone who professes to be a leader who spends full time demeaning
and just a few minutes ago, she was saying, he's the one who's bringing the divisive rhetoric, and he just called him what? Unstable, unfit.
And engaging in personal grievances and it being about him instead of the American people. People are tired of that.
If that's the case, why is half the country supporting him? Why is he beating you in a lot of swing states? Why, if he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States? Why is that happening?
This is an election for President of the United States. It's not supposed to be easy.
I know, but
It's not supposed to be. It is not supposed to be a cakewalk for anyone.
So are they misguided, the 50%?
Listen,
are they stupid? What is
God,
it?
I would never say that about the American people. And in fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean.
And here, you know, worse than the answer that she's giving is her attitude. And you can see how much he's getting on her nerves here. And you know, she's talking to him in this patronizing way, talking to him like she's a fifth grade teacher and that he's one of her students. And you know, throughout this interview, I think one of the worst, you know, things that will come out of his interview is we're starting to see her true nature. In all the other interviews that she's done, when she's in friendly territory, she can sort of act, she can pretend, she can mask her true nature. But when she is confronted to someone who's pushing back, then, you know, her real attitude is coming out. And we're seeing someone who doesn't tolerate anybody that pushes back against her, anybody that criticizes her, anybody that really doesn't go along with her will. And she has this arrogance to her that makes her very dislikable.
The American people, he's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Bret, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you.
That was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going...
All right, and I'm going to stop here for a second. And she's talking about the enemy within. Donald Trump is saying that the enemy within is the American people. And of course, that's not what he's been saying. The enemy within is people like her who are undermining America throughout the world. And she's saying Donald Trump is going to use the military against Americans. And it's very interesting that she's saying that and that she's accusing Donald Trump of doing that. And I'm going to move on here for a second off this interview to go into this new directive called Directive 5240-01 from the Department of Defense that allows the U.S. government to use a lethal force against American citizens in conjunction with the police on American soil. And this directive was enacted on September, let's see here, it is right here, on September 27, 2024. So while she is accusing Donald Trump of wanting to actually use the military against the American people during her administration just a few months ago, less than a month ago, actually it's just a few days, it's 3 weeks ago, DoD went with this Directive 5240-01 that allows, as you can see here, assistance in responding with assets with potential for lethality or any situation in which it is reasonably foreseeable that providing the requested assistance may involve the use of force that is likely to result in lethal force, including death or serious bodily injury. It also includes all support to civilian law enforcement officials in situation where a confrontation between civilian law enforcement and civilian individuals or groups is reasonably anticipated. So this directive of DoD that was passed on, once again, September 27, 24, less than 3 weeks ago, allows the U.S. military to use lethal force against American citizens in conjunction with local police. And now, after having passed this on her administration, on her watch, now she's accusing Donald Trump of wanting to use the military against American people. And it's sort of like this typical leftist agenda, accusing others of doing the very things that you are doing. And here she's accusing Donald Trump of doing that. But if she was so afraid that Donald Trump was going to use the military against the U.S. citizens, then why would you allow a Department of Defense directive to allow just that legally? And now we're going to listen to Ron Paul for a few seconds commenting on this.
But we want to start off with a headline from Zero Hedge. It's a pretty hot headline. U.S. military now is authorized to kill Americans on U.S. soil. That can't be possible. Yeah. This would open up the door for the careless use, and if more frequent and legal. It'll be legal now, so nobody will have to worry about that. Send in the troops. We need you to.
It will be legal. So, and really, these people cannot be serious. And of course, Bret Baier is not going to call her on this Fox interview because, he's trying to remain somewhat nice enough to her that maybe she would agree to do some more interviews in the future with them. Who knows, what's going to happen. But, once again, very, very hypocritical of her, of accusing Donald Trump of trying to use the military against U.S. citizens when she has just allowed legally the American military to use little force against U.S. citizens on U.S. soil.
Going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is the United States. In the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it. And this is what is at
watch the anger. Like how, this is very damaging, I think, for her. This moment is she doesn't seem to have the calm and the, really the skills that are necessary to be a leader. Watch how angry she gets on this. And, to be honest, when you see her like that, and keep in mind what I've just said, that, she's accusing Donald Trump of wanting to use the military to go after Americans while having just allowed the military to use little force against Americans. And watch how angry she gets. This is the type of anger that a leader should not have and definitely should not display. And here she is, with a journalist who has barely pushed back against her, she is getting angry like that. Just imagine someone with that kind of volatile attitude being in charge of the military in a situation where there is perhaps some unrest, with the legal framework that allows the U.S. military to use little force against Americans. She's saying that, it is a danger. Trump is a danger because he said that he would be willing to do that, when he really hasn't said that. And now it raises the question, if the situation was reversed and it was her who was in that situation, someone who's displaying that kind of rageful anger, what would be the decision that a person like that would be making? Do you think that maybe she would not do that when it's legally allowed for her to do it?
Stake, which is why you have someone like the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying what Mark Milley has said about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
He's quoted in the Bob Woodward book that way, yes. Let me ask you this, Madam Vice President. You call Donald Trump, you call Donald Trump, he's misguided. You say now he's unstable.
He is unstable, Bret.
He's not well. You say he's...
He is unstable. He is unstable. How crazy. You know, you cannot accuse your opposition of being unstable while you yourself being unstable on camera, on live TV. It doesn't work like that.
Mentally not stable?
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
I hear beautiful from Bret Baier. While she's saying that Donald Trump is unstable, he is, turning the question around to her. Well, when did you notice that Joe Biden wasn't able to fulfill the functions of the President of the United States? Let's see what she answers here. Nothing. Just an open mouth, and she cannot think of anything to say.
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room, and he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And Donald Trump
but
is.
You talked about it.
And Donald Trump is.
Yeah, Joe Biden is not on the ballot, but she is. And the question, implied here is not so much about Joe Biden's ability, it's about her ability. If she's willing to lie to the American people to pretend that Joe Biden is perfectly fine and perfectly able to make the decisions that are necessary for the President of the United States, when then a few weeks later we see him on TV in the debate against Trump and he's not even able to finish sentences, then should we really trust someone like Kamala Harris, who was willing to lie to the American people and to mask the fact that Joe Biden was not able to fulfill his duties with the role of president? Should we really have someone who's willing to sort of cover and lie to the public in the highest office?
Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
The body language is hilarious here. She's like crossing her leg, crossing her arms, crossing everything, just so upset. And now we're going to get to this point of the interview where you're going to see Bret Baier looking to the side because the aides of Kamala Harris are telling him, cut it, we're done with this interview.
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our national...
I think after this interview, people should have real concerns about her. And I think one of the biggest concerns, except for her global incompetence and her inability to really understand the complex situations that are necessary for the President of the United States, I think what really transpires from this interview is her attitude, her terrible attitude, her dislikable attitude, but also her anger. I didn't know that she had inside herself that kind of anger to, sort of almost get into a screaming match here with Bret Baier when he's remained very calm. And, the questions that you were asking, of course, he sort of confronted her with her own words, which is difficult for her because no one does that, on the rest of the left-leaning media. But, what has been shocking, I think, throughout this interview is really the anger that she has that perhaps we had not seen because she had not done any interview that didn't go her way, with interviewers that did not try to help her. And here, with someone who's pushing back just a little, we're seeing how angry she gets. Just imagine how angry she would get when something goes against her in a significant way. I think we would see a rageful person.
Two more things. You were asked on 60 Minutes about the biggest threat that the world faces, that the U.S. faces. This is what you said.
And we're not going to show this one because 60 Minutes has already given us a copyright strike, so we're going to move quickly here. But her answer was Iran. The biggest threat to the United States is Iran.
Experts thought you would say China. The FBI director had said that. But you said Iran. If that's the case, what do you say to critics who look at the actions of your administration and say you're not acting like Iran is the #1 threat?
Well, I will tell you most recently, whether it was in April or in October, and then several hours on each occasion, that Iran posed a threat to Israel. I was there, most recently in the Situation Room, in the most recent attack, working with the heads of our military and doing what America must always do to defend and to support Israel in its requirement to defend itself, and to give American support to be able to allow Israel.
And here you just watch Bret Baier just look at the side and be like, yes, 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 you know, because they're telling him to wrap it up. They're telling him this has to stop. And of course, they want it to stop because they know, by that time, they know that this is going terrible for her and she's not doing a good job at all answering the questions.
Critics just say that you either relaxed or failed to enforce sanctions on Iran, allowing all of this money to flow into Iran, like billions.
Let's go back to Donald Trump, who pulled out of a deal that would have actually put Iran in check.
The estimates in billions.
It was during Donald Trump's
that
administration that Iran
regime
that we had an American military base that was attacked, where American soldiers suffered traumatic brain injuries, and Donald Trump dismissed them as headaches, not to mention how Donald Trump has treated and talked about America's military and military service people, calling them suckers and losers,
Hamas,
has diminished the significance.
We're talking over each other. I apologize.
Well, I would like that we would have a conversation.
What she really means here is, I would like an interviewer that lets me speak and say whatever I want and not answer the questions and not interrupt me when I filibuster. And once again, here we're seeing her terrible attitude coming through and her anger coming through. And, you know, overall, I think, you know, above what she's saying here in Iran, I think her answer on that 60-minute question, it shows sort of the lack of understanding of international politics and foreign policy to say that Iran is the biggest threat to the United States. It's just stupid. Let's call it what it is. You know, Iran is, of course, a threat to Israel, but it's not a threat to America. Iran is not big enough of a country to even be a threat to America. And, you know, like Bret Baier say here, most experts would have expected you to say China. You know, for years now, for decades, we've been talking about how China is the threat to sort of the U.S. hegemony and the U.S. Leadership in the world, and that China is growing in all terms, whether it's the economy, whether it's the military, and even sort of in terms of politics of alliances. China with the Belt and Road Initiative growing and creating this network of states that are friendly to her, to it, and creating, you know, sort of an alternative network to the network of trade that the United States has created during the last century. And China is definitely challenging the United States and for someone who's seeking the highest office to point to Iran, it really points to a lack of judgment. And you're talking about someone who is, someone who is in the White House as a vice president. So someone who has exposure to advisors and who has been in the inside making policy. And, perhaps her answer was not honest, where she didn't want to, upset China while saying that, and sort of pointing to a smaller player and saying, oh, this is the adversary. But if it's not the case, if it's really what she believes, and it's really hard to know, what these Democrats believe, what she believes, what Tim Walz believes, because they're never saying the truth. They're never speaking their mind. They're going to say something one day, and the next day they're going to say the exact opposite. But if she was truthful in that 60-minute interview and her answer about Iran, it really shows a lack of judgment and a lack of understanding of foreign policy to point to Iran as the biggest adversary.
That is grounded in full assessment of the facts, which includes, I think this interview is supposed to be about the choices that your viewers should be presented about this election, and the contrast is important.
Yes, ma'am.
And on the subject of Iran,
once again, they're telling Bret Baier, you got to wrap it up.
What should be an important contrast that is presented for folks to make a decision
and there are critics
that they feel
who look at what the administration did and say and think differently. Madam Vice President, they're wrapping me very hard here. I hope you got to say what you wanted to say about Donald Trump. There are a lot of things.
There's more to say. I have much more to say.
There are a lot of things that people want to learn about.
She has much more to say. She has so much more to say. She would insult him for hours if she could.
About you and your policies,
yes.
And that's why
I invite everyone to go to kamalaharris.com, and you will see that I have 80 pages of policies that are quite comprehensive and should be accessible to anyone who would like to read them. And it includes what I intend to do about affordable housing, what I intend to do about small businesses, what I do
and that's why we invited you here
our economy,
to see where you were in 2019 and where you are now.
America's military and ensure we have the most lethal and best fighting force in the world.
Madam Vice President,
and
they're giving me a hard rap
Well,
here.
I thank you for the time.
I thank you for the time.
It's good to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so it is a wrap here for the Kamala Harris interview on Bret Baier on Fox News. A disastrous interview here. I think this is the worst interview that she's done so far, and she hasn't done many. She was on, if I can remember, we've covered 2 interviews of her. One, the video is not available anymore because CBS gave us a copyright strike, even though, it wasn't really a legitimate copyright strike. We should be able to use extracts of their interview to comment, but of course they didn't want us to do that because she already had done a terrible job in this interview. That was in friendly territory, and they even edited her out to make her answer seems more palatable, to make her seem more intelligent, when really she was having trouble to answer the questions. But this interview here on Fox News, of course, has not been edited like this to try to make her sound better than she actually sounds like. And this was, I believe, it was a taped interview, but they played the tape as it was. They did not edit it. And a devastating performance here for Kamala Harris on this interview. I think this is going to probably do more damage to her than all the interviews that she's done. We'll see, because of course it was on Fox News, so it will be watched by people who might not be inclined to vote for her, whereas the CBS 60-minute interview would have been watched supposedly by people who would have wanted to vote for her. But we're seeing the gap, as we noticed in the beginning of the video on Polymarket, the gap is increasing 1% up for Donald Trump today compared to yesterday after this interview that is doing a lot of damage, I think, for Kamala Harris. We will have to see in the next days what happens with the polling and if this interview really plays against her. We'll have to see, but quite frankly, after watching her in the interviews that we've covered on the channel, in this interview today, I think one of the major things that came out of this interview is really her attitude when she encounters pushback, when someone does not, sort of go along her way and let her do what she wants. She gets very upset, and she gets upset in a way that I didn't expect. And I've been following, of course, her and this campaign for a while, but it's the first time that we're seeing Kamala Harris gets angry, irritated, and aggressive to this point. And I think this is going to show a different Kamala Harris to the American people. They tried to portray her as this mamala, where she was like this gentle mother who is just nice with everyone and wishes the best for everyone. And now we're seeing her true nature, someone who's arrogant, someone who's aggressive, someone who's vindictive, someone who's just plenty of negative personality traits that we didn't see before, because she never was in a situation where these negative traits would come out. So this is probably not going to play very well here for Kamala Harris. But anyway, if you've made it all the way through this video, this is going to be a pretty long one, but there was a lot to cover. It was a very interesting interview. Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like, and I will see you all on the next video. Bye.
Hit me with that like and sub to the channel. Hit me with that like and click the effing bell. Click that bit, alright. The algo recommends for she go like. The algo knows you well. Hit me with that like, subscribe to the channel. Hit me with that like and click the effing bell.